be open-minded. You don't have to be a Democrat because you're an African American. He's at least making people or challenging them to question the narratives that they've maybe been growing up with and things like that. And I think that's really valuable. Weird that it's coming from Kanye West. I don't think anyone could have expected this, but more power to him. And you know what? They can try to like boo him and get him off the feed for SNL all they want, but his platform is big enough. He can do whatever he wants.
Ariel, did you like the Kanye thing last night, or you're mad at Kanye?
Well, I would say the reason that Kanye is getting booed is because he is actually assisting Trump in dog whistle calls to racism and other forms of bigotry. And the Trump administration is bringing back things like mandatory minimums, things for which black and brown people are disproportionately affected.
One of the things I like about having Ariel on is that everybody's blood pressure rises on a routine basis. It's good for the heart. But Bridget,
I just don't. So you're speaking for him, a black man, about what racism is and how he's helping an administration. I don't understand. I don't understand how you can speak for him on that. Why can't he support Trump?
I'm not speaking for him, but he isn't just supporting Trump. He's actually participating in the calls to racism, and we're seeing that rise in racism here in America. We've seen a massive rise in anti-Semitism.
By things like hate crimes, racism is on the decline. And the thing with dog whistles is that only dogs can hear them, right? And that's what I see all the time from the left. Oh, this is a dog whistle. This is a dog whistle. Maybe the paradigm that you're perhaps operating under is the one that's obsessed with race. Because if you listen to things that Kanye says, as someone who is biracial, as someone who is not from here, I wasn't born in the United States, I'm listening to it, and it doesn't seem like he's trying to signal any white supremacy.
Speaking of folks who are not bothering to dog whistle, they are actually just promoting violence. Ted Cruz was accosted in a restaurant this week. Here's what that looked like when he was yelled out of a restaurant.
We believe survivors! We believe survivors! We believe survivors!
Excuse me, let my wife through.
This, of course, is one from Smash Racism DC. A Think Progress justice editor named Ian Millhiser tweeted this week, "Tell me again why we shouldn't confront Republicans where they eat, where they sleep, and where they work until they stop being complicit in the destruction of our democracy." Are you afraid of violence breaking out from any of this, Ariel?
In America, we have a long and rich and valued history of protest, from the Boston Tea Party through the Civil Rights Movement. I think it was protest that helped end the Vietnam War, and we certainly wouldn't want to still be there. So I'm thrilled that people are showing up where Ted Cruz is and calling him out.
Do you want somebody actually confronting you where you eat, sleep, and work based on your politics?
If I'm a senator, absolutely. I'm responsible to the people.
I mean, you're a human, right? I mean, do you want somebody confronting, I mean, I assume not where you sleep. If somebody confronted me where I sleep, I would shoot them.
He's much more than a human. He's helping decide the future of our country and the future of the world, in fact. This is a Supreme Court appointment.
Okay, Lauren, what's your response to this?
So I am such a huge supporter of the right to protest, so fundamental to human rights. But at the same time, there's a difference between saying, hey, let's have this protest in public versus let's chase someone down in a restaurant where they're eating when they're trying to spend time with their family. Senators, any public official, they're not signing up for a lifetime open to harassment wherever they go. And, you asked, like, am I worried about violence? I think that's absolutely within the realm of possibility right now. And the part of me that loves civility and open dialogue and coming together hates that and hates videos like that. But the other part of me, who's a little bit more perhaps Machiavellian and pragmatic, thinks, great, do this kind of stuff. Encourage harassment of Latino men and say it's stopping racism. That's only going to turn people who are more moderate off of you. So fine.
Guys, thank you so much. Lauren, Bridget, Ariel, thanks so much for stopping by. Up next, tonight's Socialism Watch.
America's economy is booming like never before. Since my election, we've added $10 trillion in wealth. The stock market is at an all-time high in history, and jobless claims are at a 50-year low. Our military will soon be more powerful than it has ever been before. In other words, the United States is stronger, safer, and a richer country than it was when I assumed office less than 2 years ago.
While President Trump was speaking to the United Nations this week about American exceptionalism, his predecessor, you remember that guy, President Barack Obama, was speaking in Oslo, Norway. There, Obama slammed the current policies of the United States and instead praised the left's new favorite paradise, Norway. That is the subject of tonight's Socialism Watch. President Obama explained that Norway is wonderful because they use, quote, political and social levers to achieve social democratic goals. He also praised Norway for its push for gender equality. Norway's laws require that 40% of non-executive board members be female. Norway has become the favorite democratic socialist test case for the American left. Venezuela, people are eating dogs in the streets. And Cuba's gone out of fashion. Turns out that when people are floating 1950s Chevys into the Atlantic Ocean, that's kind of a bad sign. These days, Norway is the Marxist paradise. There are just a few problems with this perspective. First off, Norway isn't socialist. It's a capitalist country burdened with massively expensive socialist redistribution programs. Norway ranks 23rd in the world in business climate compared with the United States at 18th. As for Norway's social programs, its spending habits have been subsidized by an enormous oil slush fund and supremely high taxes. Here is the reality. Norway's successes, lower levels of income inequality, high levels of prosperity, those predate the rise of Norway's socialist infrastructure. They're actually a result of Nordic social capital, high levels of social trust, and cultural homogeneity. Presumably, President Obama would tell Americans that Scandinavia is a sort of heaven. In Scandinavia, he'd say, there's no poverty. Well, as Milton Friedman responded to a similar statement, in America, among Scandinavians, there's no poverty either. Social capital matters. Culture matters. That social capital is being actively undermined by Norway's generous welfare state, which actually pays people not to work. As The Economist wrote in 2015, quote, Norwegians have coined a verb, to nav, meaning to get money from NAV, the state's benefits agency. That welfare state policy also endangers immigrant social and economic mobility. As of 2017, the Norwegian Labor and Welfare Administration found that about half the total number of people in Norway receiving social welfare payments were immigrants. That report also stated that many of those immigrants were living in poverty-like conditions. No wonder Sylvie Listhaug, the Norwegian immigration minister, said this.
So what we see is that we have a big challenge now in integrate all the people that have been given permission to stay in Norway.
She added, it is not allowed to beat your children in Norway. If any politician in America said such a thing, President Obama would never, ever stop talking about systemic American xenophobia. What about Norway's supposed advantages in fighting gender equality? Norway ranks far behind countries like Russia, the United States, France, and Latvia in percentage of women who reach the top of the career ladder. High taxes in Norway have actually made it tough for women to leave the home and spend time in the workforce. Generous welfare means that often one parent actually stays at home. Considering what President Obama said earlier this year, he surely doesn't support that.
Women in particular, by the way, I want you to get more involved. Men have been getting on my nerves lately. Every day I read the newspaper and I just think, like, brothers, what's wrong with you guys? I mean, what's wrong with us? Right? I mean, we're violent, we're bullying, just not handling our business. So I think empowering more women on the continent, that ought to, right away is going to, I think, lead to some better policies.
But that's not what Norway is doing. None of this means that Norway's a terrible place. It obviously isn't. It's a pretty great place. But Norway just reminds us that socialism doesn't actually build anything. At best, it redistributes the gains that capitalism creates. At worst, it actively undermines those gains, contributing to lower growth rates and rising social problems. People on the left often justify the failures of socialism by saying it's never been truly tried. That's a lie. Socialism has failed every time it has been tried in precisely the degree that it is tried. The more socialism, the more failure. Capitalism is just the opposite. It has succeeded every time it's tried, to the degree that it's been tried. But there is good news for socialist-leaning politicians like President Obama. No matter the problem, the solution will always be more socialism. And if more socialism actually leads to Venezuela, then we're simply told that true socialism hasn't yet been tried. It's been a pleasure to be here with you tonight. We'll see you back here for the next 2 Sundays, so please join us again. Stay tuned. Steve Hilton is up next.